Mary, and I am an alcoholic.
Hi, Mary.
I'm grateful to be here tonight and grateful to be sober. It's not about me tonight, so I won't speak too long. I wish it was. Um, Lillie H. is a lady that I heard 2 years ago in Washington, D.C. at the International Women's Convention. It was a convention of 3,000 women getting sober, staying sober, and speaking the language of the heart. And this woman touched me, and she carried the message of what I want in AA today. And she's a ticket, and she's hilarious, and she's a spiritual woman, you know. But I got her tape, and I must say I've played it at least 5,000 times. So I could speak her story tonight very, very easily if I could get away with it. But I don't talk like those Maine people. So, so it's not all about me. So thank God, I found Lillie. It was hard finding her because we are anonymous. And I couldn't understand her because she does spell her name when she speaks. So through Glenn, thank God, I was able to find this woman. And I asked her if she would come and share her message of hope with everybody here tonight. And I'm grateful. She met me for the first time today, and I hope she likes me. She may go back to South Portland, Maine, and say, Jesus, that Irish crazy lady I met this weekend, I never want to see her again. But that's okay. That's okay. It's not all about me. So I am grateful. I am grateful to introduce Lillie H. from South Portland, Maine, to be our speaker tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. It's quite a billing, huh? My name's Lillie, and I'm an alcoholic. My last name is spelled Hanlon. That's so that you can find me if you want to, because I have a couple of stories about trying to find people in AA and not knowing their last names. I want to thank Mary for asking me to come. It's always a privilege to go anywhere and carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous, and there isn't anybody more surprised than I am that I'm the one that's up here speaking, because I don't know, in all honesty, how you fall off in a bar stool in Windham, Maine, and end up as a speaker in Alcoholics Anonymous. I wouldn't give an oral book report when I was going to school, so. But, alcohol does funny things to us. My sobriety date is November 8th, 1989. I did not come here with a desire to quit drinking, and that's the only requirement, but I did not have that requirement. There were a lot of people in my life that had a desire for me to quit drinking. I just wasn't one of them. And I always start by telling you what happened to me before I had my first drink, and this is what happened for me. I didn't come from a dysfunctional family. I know a lot of you do, but that's not where I came from. My family was the original Leave It to Beaver family, and my dad came home every day at 4, and my mother stayed home and took care of the kids. I have 4 brothers. None of them seem to be affected by this disease other than any havoc that I can create in their life. But I had my first drink when I was 19. Prior to that, my graduating class at the time, if your date wasn't from the senior class, they couldn't attend the senior banquet. And, of course, my date was from a different school, so his parents were going to take us out to dinner instead of going to the senior banquet. And I realized today that I was probably poor growing up, although I didn't know that. We grew up in a place called Perry Village, and by today's standards, that's probably a project, but, we thought it was a village. And my parents saved up to buy me a beautiful dress, and it was a lovely dress, and it was this beautiful light pale turquoise color, and it had a big hoop skirt, and I had these spike high heels, white spike high heels, which were the fashion, and off we went. We went to this place called the Portlander, and at that time it was a really fancy restaurant in Portland. I'd never been to a fancy restaurant anywhere. My family couldn't afford that. We might go to Watson's Grove once in a while and get a hamburger, but as far as going to any fancy restaurant, I didn't know anything about that. But anyway, his parents took us to the Portlander. It was this really lovely hotel, And I was all dressed up in this beautiful dress, and the first thing I did was sit down on the hoop, and the front of the dress went whoosh. And then his dad said that I could have anything I wanted on the menu, and they brought these menus. I'd never seen anything like it in my life, and they were huge menus, and they had tassels hanging on them. And I didn't know anything. I mean, he said I could have anything I wanted, so I opened the menu, and when the waitress came, I ordered filet mignon. And she asked me how I wanted it. I said cooked. And when they brought it, I didn't think it looked like very much on the plate, to be honest with you. I thought, wow. And but anyway, I went to cut into the steak, and when I did, it slid off the plate. And his father looked across at me, and I kicked it under the table because I didn't know what to do. And his dad looked over at me, and I said, gee, I was really hungry. And so I made my baked potato and salad last through the meal. And when we got up to leave, I realized I had skewered that steak with the heel of my shoe. And I sort of walked out like Groucho Marx. And it wasn't until 6 months later that I had a drink of alcohol. And things happen for me. You know, things happen for me all the time, whether I'm drinking or not. When I'm drinking, it's a lot worse. Anyway, I had my first drink at the age of 19. I had it in a place called the VFW. I had another beautiful white dress. It was my wedding, and another hoop. And I learned how to kneel down and sit down so I wouldn't flash the priest at church. And you know, that place was later to become the Sahara Club. But at that time, it was the VFW, and I didn't know anything about drinking. I mean, my dad would come home once in a while, and he'd have a quart of beer, and he'd split it. My two grandmothers lived with me as a kid, and my dad would bring a quart of beer in, and he'd split it with my mom and the two grandmothers and himself. And I just, once I started drinking, I just thought, why would you even bother? You know, I mean, a quart of beer and you split it with 4 people. I mean, I don't understand that. But anyway, he asked me what I was going to have, and I didn't know. And I said, Dad, what are you having? And he was going to have a whiskey and ginger. And if you've ever drank in a service club, you know what that's like. You know, they give you a lot of whiskey and a little bit of ginger, and he said, here's to you. And what I knew about drinking, I'd seen on TV. You know, Lucy and Desi were going to cocktail parties, and if anybody said, here's to you, you downed it. And so that's what I did. And then the next thing is I was taking my dress off on the front lawn, you know, and that's the way it was going to be for me when I drank. I always lost my clothes. I don't know what happens. Well, you know, if you're a woman in AA and you know. I mean, I just don't know what happens. It overcomes us. I mean, we have a few drinks and we got to lose our clothes. And sometimes we lose them and we don't find them again either, you know, and that can be tough. Anyway, the man I married was an alcoholic. I didn't even know he was an alcoholic, you know. I had no idea. And I remember times when he used to try to not drink, and I used to think, well, he's the one with a drinking problem, so I don't have to not drink. Just because he's not drinking don't mean I'd have to stop, you know. And that was a sign way back then, but I didn't know that, you know. And anyway, that marriage didn't last because of his alcoholism. At the end of his drinking, he became a violent drunk, and he would come home and we'd get into fights. And I'm a little Irish girl, and I'm brought up to stand your own ground, and I was brought up with 4 brothers, so no way I was going to be his punching bag. If he punched me, I'm punching back. And I'm not proud of that, you know, but the last night that we spent together, we almost killed each other, and I really tried to kill him. He had come in the house. I was 6 months pregnant. He'd come in the house, and he tripped over a bedspread. I was changing bedrooms around, and he kicked me in the stomach, and he broke 4 of my ribs, and then he punched me, and he knocked my 4 front teeth down my throat. And you know, it's the only time in my life that I ever saw stars, and I knew that if I didn't fight back, that he would kill me and the kids. And I don't know how I knew that, but I knew it, and I fought back, you know. And I'm here to tell you that the end of the story goes like this. I burned him with boiling water. He went into shock. I dragged him across the length of the apartment, pushed him out a second-story window, and I was standing on the roof with a vacuum cleaner over my head when the cops got there. I was going to kill him. I thought if I dropped the vacuum cleaner on his head, he would die, and I could collect his Social Security. And that's just the thinking of an alcoholic, and at that time I didn't even know that I suffered from the disease of alcoholism. What happened was I always wanted to be a serious drinker. I'd hear them talk about being a serious drinker, and it just sounded appealing to me, a serious drinker. I only needed one drink, and I'd get drunk, and I'd either be in a barroom fight or I'd lose my clothes. And I wanted to be a serious drinker. I really and truly just wanted so badly to be a serious drinker. And one time I asked my husband's friend, I said, how do you get to be a serious drinker anyway? And he said, well, Lily, you're really a lightweight, and somebody like you probably ought to coat their stomach. And I was like, well, what do you coat it with? And he said, well, a little vegetable oil. Well, I'm a real alcoholic. A little for me was a half a cup of vegetable oil, and I drank it because I wanted to be a serious drinker. And I'm here to tell you that if you haven't done that, you don't need to. Doesn't help you become a serious drinker. It just makes you puke in neat little piles. I bought a house after we got divorced because it became very apparent to me that now I had to be everything. And I'm that thing that happens to alcoholic women. If you're an alcoholic single mother, you get an S on your chest. It comes with the territory. You're Superman. You're super mom, you're super doctor, super lawyer, super Indian chief, super nurse. You can do it all. I don't need any help from you. Thank you very much. Take your child support money and cram it, which he wasn't giving me anyway, but, it sounded very bold and, well, I don't need that. I don't need you, and I don't need nothing. And so I bought this beautiful house in Windham, Maine, and then I proceeded with my alcoholism to destroy that house. Started out really beautiful, and, here's the thing, by now I'm a divorced single mom, and I can go out and drink the way that I want to drink, only things happen for me. I would not be able to find my way home, and so the babysitter would be like on duty for 3 days. I was going out for 3 hours, and she'd be there for 3 days, that started to bother me, and I thought, I really ought to be home with my kids, and I had to devise a plan where I could be home with them. And what I came up with was this plan. I thought, well, I'll buy beer and I'll strategically place it around my backyard, and then I'll go out and mow the lawn, and when I get to a beer, I'll stop and have one. And, that worked really good for me. I drank like a 12-pack, and I was in my own yard, and it was great, and my kids were in the house, and I was where I was supposed to be, and after that, I mowed the lawn every day, and then winter was coming, and I raked the yard every day, and then I shoveled it, and then I found the bars, and I had a good job working for the federal government. I quit the job because I wanted a raise, and my boss couldn't give me a raise, and I quit. And I realized today that really was not about getting a raise. It was about getting my own way. And by now I decided that I really couldn't afford to pay for as much booze as I needed to drink. And so if you're an alcoholic of my ilk, this is what we do. We quit a perfectly good job to become a bartender. Because if you're a bartender, you can get closer to the booze. And, they tell you can have an after-shift drink. Well, I've never met an alcoholic bartender that didn't drink before the shift, during the shift, and after the shift. And that was my deal, And I had the happy hour crowd, and I worked at a place. First I worked at the AmVets, and then I got my dream job. I became a saloon girl. I always wanted to be a saloon girl, And I worked at this place called the Silver Spur, and geez, I loved it. I dressed up like a cowgirl, and it was awesome. And I would get so drunk, doing my job. I would get so plastered, but I looked good, I had white cowboy boots and a little denim skirt and a vest and a hat, and and about this time in my life, I'm driving a 1972 Pontiac Ventura that didn't have a front seat. And I don't know what happened to the front seat. I still don't remember what happened to the front seat. What I remember is that I had bolted a milk crate to the floor. Even the furniture in my house was made out of milk crates and boards, two boards and a milk crate, and you had a seat, and two stacked up in a board, and you had a table. And you could also have a front seat for your car. And so I bolted this thing to the front seat in where the front seat was supposed to go. And then I had a pillow on it, and then I had a piece of wood that went up the back, and another piece of wood, like a 2x4, that was sort of propped at an angle from the back seat to the back of this piece of wood so that it made a back. So I had a seat. And So I'm coming home from the saloon one night about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm all dressed up like a cowgirl. And of course, if you're going to be a cowgirl, you got to listen to country music. And so I got Tammy Wynette on, you know, singing "Stand by Her Man," and it's 2 in the morning, and I get pulled over by the cops. And I intuitively knew not to open the door. I was like, don't open the door, because if you do, it's going to be a problem. It's probably against the law to drive sitting on a milk crate. It never occurred to me that driving drunk might be against the law. I just thought that sitting on a milk crate was probably against the rules. And so when he came up and he asked me where I had been, and I said, well, do you want me to tell the truth or do you want me to tell a lie? And he said, of course we want you to tell the truth. And I said, my horse died. I've just come from burying him. And he was like, where do you live? And I was like, just down the street. You know, why don't you get there? You know, and that's the way it was going to be for me. I got pulled over so many times, but it was always some extenuating circumstances going on in the vehicle at the time. And they would say, where do you live? And I would say, just down the street. And they'd say, why don't you get there? You know, and I was just crazy. I was just crazy, you know. And now I'm a barroom drinker, and when my kids needed me the most, I was there the least, you know, because that's where my disease took me, you know. And we destroyed this most beautiful house that we had. We absolutely destroyed it. You know, there were punch holes in all the walls, and there were none of the doors had locks on them. What good was that? We just, you know, take them out with screwdrivers. And there were 13 windows in that house, and 13 windows had bullet holes in them. And I don't know if I was shooting out or the neighbors were shooting in. I mean, I don't know. I know that one of the neighbors one time tried to come and save me. She was a born-again Christian, and nothing against those people, but, you know, they probably shouldn't be trying to save an alcoholic from themselves, because she came almost regularly to my house to save me. And I'd say to her, I am saved, you know, I'm saved. And she'd want Brother Fletcher to talk to me, and I'd be like, bring him over. I don't care. Bring Brother Fletcher over. I'll show him I'm saved, you know. And this was what I did. I made an appointment for her to bring this Brother Fletcher. I don't know what they are. I mean, I don't know anything about it. But she's going to bring Brother Fletcher to my house the next day at 4 o'clock. And this was my idea of showing Brother Fletcher that I'd been saved. I donned a pair of white short shorts and a red halter top. I put a lawn chair on the front lawn. I put speakers in the window facing out, and I put Elvis Presley on the stereo, singing How Great Thou Art as loud as it would play, while I'm drinking a bottle of Bacardi, right, you know, just downing it, when Brother Fletcher came. Yeah, Brother Fletcher didn't stay long. He I mean, I don't know. I antagonized people. That's what I did. I was good at that, you know. And so anyway, one night we're working at the saloon, and it's a really hot night, and I decide that maybe what we ought to do is go skinny dipping after work. And never been skinny dipping before, but I thought it was a good idea. And so I was so drunk that night that when I had my after shift drink, I went in the bathroom. And I remember distinctly locking the door and then not remembering how to unlock it. So I had to crawl out from underneath because I couldn't figure out how to unlock the bathroom stall, you know. But came out, and we had the car, and off we're going. I'm driving, and we're going to go, and there's 6 of us. 3 guys, 3 girls, and we're going to this bridge in Wyndham. I wouldn't have jumped off that bridge for $1 million, but drunk, I'd do anything, you know. And I think of it today. I mean, every once in a while I go over that place, and they've torn the bridge down now, but there's a road still goes over the water, but there used to be a big metal bridge there, and I think to myself, you have got to be kidding. I mean, there were rocks and all kinds of things under there. We didn't think of that. We were drinking. We didn't care, so we'd take our clothes off, fold them all up nice and neat, and I got this thing now that, you know, if you're not going to be in the, you know, you got to, if you're in the car and you're drunk and you're going to be doing something, well, you got to take the key out and you got to put it on top of the passenger side front tire. Now, I have no idea where that came from, but it was a really good plan, because now they can't get you for drunk driving because there's no keys in the car. Anyway, we folded our clothes all up nice and neat. We jump off this bridge, and I'm telling you that when you jump from that high, and if you don't know what you're doing and you hit the water just right and you're bare naked, your ass hits that water, smack. I mean, it hurts. And then, you know, you're really quiet, like you 6 drunks can only be that quiet at 2 in the morning, you know. Woo! And Next thing, we see blue lights, and I tell my friends that I've got a good idea. I said, I got a good idea. Let's just swim downstream. So we swim downstream, we're all in the water and everything, and pretty soon we see the cops leave. So now we come up through somebody's backyard. There's 6 of us, all naked, and we're running very quietly, running up through their backyard, and we get up to the bridge, and the cop had taken our clothes. And this one guy that was with us, he was married, and he said, Lillie, my wife is going to be really pissed if I go home and my hair's all wet. And I said, well, Gil, I got a really good idea. You get in the front, stick your head out the window, I'll drive really fast. You can blow dry your hair. So we're in the car, we're going down the road, he's got his head stuck out the window, we're in this Pontiac with a milk crate for a seat. We're going up the highway, and the blue lights come on, and I say to my friends, let me handle it, and so the cop comes up to the window, and he shines his light in the window, and there's 6 naked people sitting in the car, and he says, what are you doing? And I said, it's really hot, we're just riding around trying to get cooled off. And he was like, you are a causation. Now, I didn't know that was against the law. Then he said, where do you live? And I said, just down the street. And he was like, why don't you get there, And I got to tell you, a couple of winters ago, I was in the mall, and I saw Gil with his wife, and he sees me, and he goes, like, I'm going to say something, Anyway. So now I have a job. I'm also working at the AmVets, a really high-class place. I'm working there, and I got the happy hour crowd, and one day I got a phone call at 2:30 in the afternoon. They suspected my youngest son was selling marijuana at school, and I was already drunk, but, my cure for that was to eat eucalyptus cough drops on the way to the school, and I went up there and got this kid out of the school, and I immediately got a good idea, and that's my problem. I always got good ideas, And I thought, well, I'm just going to call the chief of police. I knew him by his first name because the cops had pulled me over so many times that I went down there and complained one time to the cops and said, tell them, you got to tell these guys to stop pulling me over. They pull me over for no reason. I'm not doing anything. It's just 2 in the morning, and they pull me over. I don't like it, and I want it to stop. So that's how I knew who he was. And I called him and told him that my son was selling marijuana at school, and I wanted it to be analyzed. And so he analyzed it, and come to find out it was oregano. Anyway, my son got kicked out of school, and we had to go before the school board, and, I'm a drunk mother by now, and so my answer to everything is, I have the big S. Don't forget, I got the big S. I'll show you, son. You come with me. I'll show you how to beat them at their own game. So off we go to the school board meeting, like Harper Valley PTA. Back then, it's on TV, like, I don't care. Well, so what? It's on TV. And we stand before the school board, and my son's like this tall. And one of the guys on the school board says, my son wouldn't do that. He's a Boy Scout. And I proceed to tell him he's an idiot. On TV, you really are an idiot, because he's in the same Boy Scout troop with your kid. I don't know what they're doing when they're supposed to be out getting badges, but I don't think it's anything good. And so they expelled my son. And he ended up going to an alternative school, and I ended up volunteering there, and then I ended up getting a job there. So now I'm a drunk bus driver. And what a good deal this was, though, because I had the summers off, so now I could get summer jobs. And I had some really good summer jobs. I had this job one time. I was babysitting somebody's dogs, and they lived on the lake, and they had, you wouldn't believe the toys these people had to play on the lake. They had boats, and they had skidoos, and, you name it, they had it. And so I said to the woman one day, I said, I think I've got a really good idea how to make some extra money while I'm watching your dogs. And she's like, really, what's that? And I said, I think I'm going to sell sandwiches and coffee to the fishermen out on the lake. Can I use your boat? And she was like, sure. So I got over there, and it's in the morning. I decided now I don't like who I am, but I didn't know that's what was going on. So I decided that morning to be Jimmy Buffett. And so I dressed all up like Jimmy Buffett, and I made a picture of margaritas. And I got the tape and I put it in the boat and I got the sandwiches and the coffee, and it's 7:30 in the morning and I'm sitting up on the back of the boat and I'm steering with my foot, because you got to have two hands. You got to have one to hold your margarita and the other one to wave to the fishermen to see if they want to buy a sandwich. And I always knew just before I was going to pass out. I didn't know it was passing out or blacking out or any of that. I thought it just was the weeble wobbles, you know. I'd get a little woozy and think, well, you better calm yourself down. And so what I did was I laid down on the bottom of the boat. Now, if you don't pull the throttle back or push the throttle ahead, I'm going full tilt down the lake, and I'm laying down in the boat, and then all of a sudden, if nobody's steering, the boat's going around and around and around like this. And the Boy Scouts came and tried to save me. And so that plan didn't work very well because I didn't sell any sandwiches that day. Anyway, so now they're talking to me at work about my drinking because I'm showing up in the morning and I've got alcohol in my breath, and I'm telling them to mind their own business, you know, why don't you mind your own business? And I'm driving a school bus, and now I know that I'm in trouble. I know that there's something wrong with me, and I know that I have a drinking problem. I don't think I'm an alcoholic. I don't know about that yet, you know. I just know that I don't like who I am anymore. I really hate who I am. And I didn't know that you could come to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous and get sober. My plan was, well, just be somebody different. Be somebody different every morning. And I'd get up every morning and I'd be somebody different. You know, I might be Al Jolson. I might be Jimmy Buffett. I might be, you know, Patsy Cline. I don't know who I'm going to be, you know. And so now I'm doing that every day. And I'm absolutely insane, you know, and I'm going to the bar every afternoon, and I don't want to go to the bar every afternoon, but that's what I'm doing, you know. And on the day before my last drunk, I dyed my hair purple, you know. I have no idea why I dyed my hair purple. I just felt like it, you know, and it's long before it was fashionable for anybody to have purple hair, and certainly women my age didn't have purple hair. But, you know, and then I went to the bar and I told the bartender that I thought I might be an alcoholic. I wasn't sure. They should keep the drinks coming while I made up my mind. And then I remember sometime in the night saying to that guy, you know, I'm going to ask God to give me a sign. If I'm really, really an alcoholic, God will give me a sign and I'll quit drinking. And this is what happened for me. You know, by now, I don't know. I have a vehicle. I have purchased a new vehicle because I'm an athlete and I need to get this vehicle to carry my athletic equipment in. And I have bought myself a 23-foot van to carry a set of darts. And that's really about having a bed in the back and a Coleman cooler full of booze and a change of clothes and not having to drive drunk. And the cops would come and I'd have that thing parked on the side of the road, and they'd say, you know, you got to, where do you live? I live in Wyndham. Well, you better drive this thing to Wyndham. And I'd say, I'm not stupid. If I drive, you're going to get me for OUI. And they say, if you don't take it off the road, we're going to haul it, we're going to tow it. And I'd say, well, if you're going to tow it to Wyndham, that's where I live. You know, I mean, just absolutely insane. And now I'm driving a school bus that looks like my van, so I don't know if I'm driving my van or the school van or whose van am I in, and I would have to, you know, wake up in the morning and look and see, am I in the school van? Because I didn't go home anymore. I just slept in the back of the van. Anyway, this morning it was a 15-passenger van that I drove, and I loaded up. I had 15 kids on board, and back then it was 25 miles across country roads to get to the school. It was an alternative school, and I began to sweat, and I thought, oh my God, something's, you know, what's going on? And then I felt this pressure in my chest, like, oh my God, you know, and all I could think of was, please God, don't let me go off the road with all these kids on this van, you know. And I made it to work, and I got out, and I went into my office, and I collapsed with a massive coronary. And I remember waking up in the ambulance thinking it didn't need to be that big a sign. And then the next thing I remember is being in the hospital, you know, and they called my family members and said it was very likely that I wouldn't make it, that, you know, I had a serious problem and that I had suffered a major heart attack, and they didn't know if I would come through it or not. But what I remember is waking up and there being tubes and monitors everywhere that there could be tubes and monitors, and my youngest brother was there and my mom was there, and And I was laying on a stretcher, and I had a white pillowcase under my head, and I had purple hair, and I thought, boy, oh boy, you better come up with something quick, you know. And my brother walked over, and he says, gee, sis, what happened? And I said, I don't know, but whatever they're giving me, it's turning my hair purple. And, you know, I knew that that was a lie, but you see, I'm an alcoholic, and if you've ever told a lie until you believe it yourself, you're sitting in the right place. I'm not taking your inventory. I'm just telling you that social drinkers don't do that stuff, you know. Anyway, I was in the hospital. I had that heart attack on October the 29th, and I was in the hospital until November the 8th. And while I didn't have anything to drink after October 28th, the reason I call November 8th my sobriety date is this. I could not let any member of my family take me home from the hospital because I had created such havoc in that house. I had destroyed that house. You couldn't tell the clean clothes from the dirty clothes. It was absolutely a disaster. The sink was full of dirty dishes. I mean, everything that I never wanted to be, I had become. And so I got a friend to give me a ride home, and she dropped me off the end of the driveway, and I went up to the door, and there was a note on the door from the bank, and they were going to foreclose on my house. And when I went inside the house, there was no lights and no running water and no heat, no groceries, no children, no telephone. And I said, I can't stay here. And I drove to the bar that I drank in, and I sat down, and, you know, there was a mirror behind the bar, and there had always been a mirror there. But that night, I doctored my hand all up to do a shot of tequila, and I looked up, and what I saw scared me to death, because what I saw was a hopeless, helpless, pathetic, drunk mother. And I knew that my kids deserved more, but I had no idea what was going on, you know. And I put that drink down, and I walked out of that place, you know. And that's why I consider November 8th to be my sobriety date. I went to work. I didn't know that I was supposed to stay home and recover. I went to work. There was a lady at my work, and she had taken the time to write me a letter. And she, as soon as I got to work, she sent me back home again with a letter. And I got home and I read the letter, and she said that the kids at the school loved me very much, and so did the staff, and it was breaking their heart to see what was happening to me. And she suspected that I might have a problem with alcohol, and the reason that she thought that was because she was a member in good standing of AA. And I'd like to tell you that I thought, well, isn't she lovely? But that was not my thought at all. And so she invited me to come to her house and go to dinner. And then she was going to take me to a meeting. And, you know, I'm the kind of a drunk, this is the kind of drunk I've become. You know, I'll promise you the moon. I'm sitting at the bar stool, you're moving next Tuesday? Sure, I'll help you, but come next Tuesday, try to find me. I'll be back at the bar again, you know. And so anyway, and I knew that I wasn't going to go to her house. There was no way that I was going to this lady's house. To hell with that, you know. But that night, you know, that I said I was going to ask God to give me a sign, this is what it sounded like. I remember kneeling down in the back of my van and saying, God, please give me 1/10 of the faith that my mother has. And that night, I'm sitting in my kitchen that was absolutely destroyed, and I heard my mother's voice. She was nowhere near, but I heard her voice, and she said, Lily, if you're not going to go call her, it would be really rude not to show up. And I went to the phone to call her, and the phone was dead. I owed Ma Bell about $700 when I got here, and it never occurred to me to go to a phone booth and put a quarter in the phone booth and call her up. So I drove 15 miles to her house to tell her I couldn't come. And she said, come right in, you know. And she had a gift for me, and it was all wrapped up. And I never want to forget how I felt when I unwrapped it. You know, it was a blue book, and in big white letters it said Alcoholics Anonymous. And I thought, oh, my God. And I broke out in a sweat again, and I thought, how the hell am I going to get out of this, you know? And she said, why don't you read what I wrote inside the front cover? And inside the front cover, she had written, to Lily, my friend with love, may you someday know how important this day is to me. Fasten your seatbelt and welcome to the greatest adventure of your life, one day at a time. And that's exactly what it's been for me. You know, I have not had a drink since then. And we went that night to the meeting, and it was down these stairs, and there was an old guy standing outside. It was cold, and he was shaking, and I'm thinking, Jesus, somebody get the guy a drink, you know. And little did I know that in 2 years' time he'd be celebrating 50 years, and he asked me to give him his 50-year medallion, you know. But this guy stuck his hand out to me, and he said, welcome, you're amongst your own kind. And I thought, I don't think so, bucko. And, you know, it was a big room, and like half of the room was non-smoking and the other half was smoking. Well, it might as well have all been smoking because you couldn't see anything in there. The next guy I run into is as tall as the other guy is short. He's got a belt buckle that's about my eye level, says bullshit on it. And he's all grinning and happy, and oh, it just keeps getting better and better and better. And I was like, oh my God, you know. And this lady got up and gave a talk. I have no idea what she said. The words that she said that saved this drunk's life were these: if you're here at the Portland group, we have a way to help you start a new way of life by offering you a white chip. And if you're too afraid to pick one up, see me after the meeting and I'll give you one. In my whole life, I had been driven by fear, and I didn't know that. You know, but I come from tough Irish stock, and the way that you deal with things is you just get right up there. I don't care. You knock me out. It is not going to make a difference to me. I am not letting you know that I am afraid of you. And so when she said that, I looked around the room. I'm sitting in the third row in the end seat. I look around the room, and I am thinking, well, you have sunk to an all-time low now. You know, you come from a place called the Dump on the Hump, and now here you sit with a room full of losers. You know, they're all going around the room, oh, I'm so-and-so, and I'm an alcoholic, and I'm Joe, and I'm an alcoholic. But when they got to me, there was just enough people-pleasing left in me, you know, that I didn't want to be the odd man out. So I said, I'm Lillie, I'm an alcoholic. And then I said, oh, my God, I'm an alcoholic. And they knew. They knew. You know, I went to that meeting, I had purple hair sticking straight up, a coat up to here, you know, I'm looking all around, you know. Went to the coffee pot, smelled the coffee. I figured they had to be something in the coffee. They couldn't be all smiley and huggy without being shit-faced, you know. So anyway, so I got that white chip, and you know, and then they said, you know, and they had the steps on the wall, and you know, I'm a smart alcoholic. I read those the first night, picked and chose the ones I was going to do, you know. Then they said, get a sponsor. I was like, oh my God, get a sponsor. Then I figured out that I'd get this lady to sponsor me that I drank with. I wouldn't have to do 4 and 5 because she'd been with me on a lot of my escapades. And that was a mistake, you know, because she immediately started taking me through the steps. And then they told me I had to get a home group. And I picked a home group based on how far it was from my house. It was only a mile, and I figured if I got drunk, I could walk there. And then I got there, and then there was this guy there, you know, and he's standing there talking to this other guy, and they're just standing in the kitchen talking, and they're talking about, this guy's talking about getting his pilot's license. And that when he got to AA, he didn't know how to read. And I was impressed with that. I didn't know if he was like taking visual courses to learn how to fly a plane, but he didn't know how to read when he got to AA, and now he was going for a pilot's license, you know. And then he asked me magic words that were going to have me come back again to AA. Can you come next week and help us set up the chairs? Well, of course I can come and help you set up the chairs. And then I would get there, and he would say, well, let's put them all facing that way. So when I'd put the chairs all up, he'd say, now leave a little space in between and make sure they're all nice and straight. So I'm slamming those chairs down, you know. And then the next week, he'd say, why don't we put them all facing that way? And don't forget, leave a little space and make them all even. And I'm thinking to myself, this poor guy, he's got nothing to do but think up how the hell he wants these chairs every week. Then the frosting on the cake, I go one night, and he goes, why don't we set them up like a triangle, and we'll put the other chairs around in a circle, and it will be the symbol of AA. And I'm like, are you nuts? What is wrong with you, you know? And, you know, I came to find out afterwards that he was just passing it on. You know, and that when he was new in AA, somebody took him aside and showed him how to put the chairs up. And he's here tonight, sitting right there in the front row. And he's going to tell you if I tell any lies. And, but, you know, it kept me sober because I just thought, my God, the guy can't read. Now he's going to be a pilot. And, you know, and I was really upset with him over the chairs. But then I found out that he had done the chair duty, so guess it was all right if he did it, you know. And he was sober a long time, and I thought he was like some kind of a god, because how the hell could anybody, if you're drunk like me, how can you go that long without drinking, you know? But then I would go to the meeting. So this sponsor, she's a smart woman. She had me call her every morning at 6. Not 5 minutes off, not 5 minutes past 6 o'clock. If you called and it wasn't 6 o'clock, she'd either hang up on you or she wouldn't answer the phone at all. And I was like, she's really rude, you know? And I said, why do you do that? She says, I'm trying to teach you some responsibility. And she saw my house, and I said, I think we should just bulldoze it over. And she says, no, I think what you'll do is go inside the front door and clean the first 3 feet. Clean everything in that 3 feet. She said, clean the floor, clean the ceiling, clean the walls. Anything in that 3 feet, decide whether you're keeping it or getting rid of it. If you're getting rid of it, get rid of it. If you're keeping it, put it someplace. When you get done, put a chair in that 3 feet and call me. And I'm thinking, what a retard, you know? But I did what she said, you know, and I called her up and I said, what now? And she said, the next 3 feet. You know, and I restored that house, you know, and that was the goal, you know, restore your life, restore your house, restore. This was another bright idea she had. I said, they're going to foreclose on my house. And she says, why don't you call the bank and ask to speak to the manager and make an appointment and go up there. And when you get up there, tell them you're an alcoholic. I was like, well, there's a brilliant idea if I ever heard one. But I did what she said, you know. So I go there, I make an appointment, I go sit down with him, I say, hi, I said, I'm an alcoholic. He goes, we know. I said, I'd like to pay you back the money that I owe you. He says, we'd like to have it. And I knew they didn't want my house, because who the hell wanted that place, you know. And I just sold that house in August. And completely restored, you know. And we went through the steps, but I can remember, you know, that first 30 days, I thought it was terrible. I'd call her at 6 o'clock in the morning, and she'd ask me where are you going to a meeting tonight? So I figured it out right away. Get one of those meeting books, and I'd flick through it, no, going to Crossroads tonight. And she'd say, good, pick me up. And then she'd say, like one time she says to me, she says, there's a workshop on Saturday, and it's going to be where we have our home group meeting, and you have to bring the donuts. And I said, nobody asked me to bring donuts. She said, I just did. So I had to bring the donuts, you know, so off we go, and I bring the donuts. And then, so we'd go to these meetings. I'd pick her up, we'd go to these meetings. So we'd get there, I swear to God, the first 30 days, every meeting we went to, this lady would get up and talk. She was all happy, joyous, and free. Oh, I'm happy, joyous, and free. And she would gag me with a spoon. I thought, Jesus. You know, and then they would talk about, they'd either talk about a drink, you know, like a glass sweating, and I'd be thirsty going, you know, why have they got to talk about booze, you know? Jeez, I'm thirsty, you know? Or they would talk about it's cunning and baffling and powerful and fatal and progressive and terminal. And I'm thinking, Jesus, lighten up, you know? I don't know if I can do this, you know? And so now it's 30 days. I'm coming up on a 30-day chip. At home, it's red. And I call it the blood chip. And I'm going to go get that blood chip, and then I'm going to the dump on the hump, and I am going to get drunk because I cannot take this. And I was with Gordon, and off we go to this meeting, and this lady gets up at the podium. She got on a red sock and a blue sock and a Hawaiian shirt. She got a Christmas tree on her head. And it's playing, like, rocking around the Christmas tree or some foolish Christmas. And she's all toothy and happy and grinning, and her partner's the bullshit buckle guy. And she says, hi, I'm Ricky, and I'm an alcoholic. And if I don't drink between now and May 1st, I'll be sober 15 years. And I'm sitting in the front row because that's what they told me. Lily, you need to sit in the front. See, you're a real alcoholic. You need to sit in the front. I said, why? Is that where all the real alcoholics sit? No, Lily, you're nosy. And if somebody comes in, you're going to want to know, are they a couple? How did she get her hair like that? Where did she get those shoes? So you sit in the front row and pay attention to the speaker. So this woman gets up. She says she's going to be 15 years sober. And I go, yes! You're crazy. I was so excited. She was wacky, you know, and it didn't bother them, you know. And so after the meeting, I said, oh, my God, you're crazy. You are crazy. And it doesn't seem to bother these people. Maybe I could hang out with you for a while, you know. And she was like, absolutely, you know. And you know, that woman taught me how to do 12-step calls. And I remember one time we go on this 12-step call, and she's got a hat that had, like, these leaves and stuff, and she drove a Cadillac, but we go to this house and we pick up this woman, and we go to the meeting, and after we dropped her off that night, I said, you know, I think Ricky, I think she's going to make it. And she says, what makes you think so? And I said, she got in the hat with you, she got in the car with you, you know, because she had this ridiculous hat on her head, and this lady got in the car. I was like, whoa, she really wants to be sober, you know? And God, I've had such a wonderful, um, everything in my life is different, you know? I'm a sober grandma, you know, and I can remember at my third anniversary, my daughter stood at the podium and read how it works, practicing. She was going, she's getting ready to have my first grandchild, and the men in the group said, "For God's sake, Lillie, take her to the hospital." And you know, and I got to tell you, what a big thrill to be sober and be in the room when your first grandchild's born. You know, and that kid's never seen me drink, and he's going to be 21 years old pretty soon. And I remember when I got my 8-year medallion. Gordon had bought me a beautiful purple medallion, and I took it home that night. And Derek was about 4 years old, and I said, "Look, Derek, look what I have." And he said, "What is it?" And I said, "It's a medallion." And he goes, "Oh, it's beautiful." And I said, "Well, I got one for you." I said, "Would you like to have it?" And he says, "Well, what's it for again?" And I said, "It's because I don't drink." He says, "No, thanks. I'm thirsty." You know, and so I restored that house, and then I moved. And you know, I take care of my mother, and I've been taking care of my mother for 13 years. And I consider that a privilege today, you know, because when my mother wanted me around and needed me around, I was a drunk. You know, I always had an excuse. I'd go to the MFO, you know, the mandatory family outing, and, you know, and then I'd get there, and those people don't drink like I do, so I'd have to leave, you know. I'd have to get on up the road, you know. "Oh, Mom, the car's not working right. Oh, I got to go get gas. I got to do this. I got to do that. Well, I got the air's low in the you know, something." Because I had to get out of there, because those people don't drink like I do, you know, and I had to go somewhere where I could drink, you know. And so 3 children, 2 of those children are active alcoholics, and now I'm involved in service work because I have a sponsor that says, you know, there's no reason why you can't be involved in service work. And I'm working at the central service office, and I'm answering the phone. And one day my daughter called looking for help. And I don't recommend that you 12-step your own kids, but I'm here to tell you that that day I didn't know what to do, and I said to the director of CSO, I said, "I don't know what to do." And he said, "Of course you do. You get another woman, and you go and tell her that if she wants to change her life, there's a way out, and it's called AA." And it was Gordon's wife that went with me that day to 12-step my daughter, and you know, she's sober 21 years, and she doesn't seem to need this program as desperately as I do. I mean, if I don't go to meetings, my brain automatically starts thinking alcoholically again. And I was recently at a convention, and the guy said, "There's no such thing as alcoholic thinking." And I thought, well, hang around with me for a week, and you'll know that there's alcoholic thinking. My youngest son is in jail tonight, and you know, he had a measure of sobriety too. He had 10 years of sobriety, and he got married, and they had a child, and she was born on the 72nd anniversary of the founding of Alcoholics Anonymous, and their marriage fell apart, and he stopped going to meetings, and he stopped calling his sponsor, and he went back out. Only the next time that he went out, it wasn't just alcohol, it was drugs too, and today he's in jail because he got drunk and he jumped into somebody's car, and he thought he was just getting a ride. And I said, "Yeah, they kind of look at that as carjacking. You know, they don't look at that as you need to ride somewhere." And but I'm here to tell you that, you know, he's in jail and I can sleep at night. You know, I go to Al-Anon as well, but I'm here just to let you know from a mother's point of view that it's my opinion that the hardest thing you'll ever do in this program is watch somebody you love dying from this disease. And I've been watching him for a long time. You know, and when he got sober, I had all my hopes in that. You know, my God, he's sober, and he's getting married, and you know, now they have a child. And then the divorce came, and I was like, oh, God, you know. And then he started drinking again, and then he started drugging. And I'm here to tell you that it's really hard watching him. It's really hard watching him. And it's even more hard to keep my mouth shut. You know, there should be a slogan that says, "Just shut up, Lillie," you know. Because I don't know what to say to him except AA. You know, that's all I've got now. AA is my life. And I don't have any friends that aren't in the program, and I don't know what to say to him. You know, and it breaks my heart to see him there. But on the other hand, I can sleep at night knowing that he's not in a snowbanking, because you see, last winter, when I went to speak and met Mary, he was on life support in the hospital from a drug overdose. And so it has been a very long walk with this kid. You know, I'd like to tell you, when you come to AA, everything gets wonderful and hunky-dory-do, but life happens, you know, and life happens to ordinary people. But when life happens to alcoholics, we seem to take it just a little bit different, you know. And in March of 2002, I was asked to speak at a convention in Cape May, New Jersey. And I have this one son that's not an alcoholic, you know, and he did everything he ever wanted to do. You know, he wanted to play hockey, and he played hockey. He wanted to play Little League, and he was an all-star player. And he joined the Marines, you know, and he was the Marine of the cycle. And he did all these things. And so he's working in Washington, D.C., and he got a job for the Department of Defense, and his job was to guard foreign dignitaries. And he used to call us up, and he'd say, well, I can't tell you who I'm guarding. Just watch TV, and you'll know. Just watch TV. You know, and he guarded Pope John Paul, and he guarded Mother Teresa, and he called, and he said, Mom, I just had the biggest thrill of my life. And I said, what's that? And he said, Mother Teresa hugged me. And he said, she's this tiny, tiny little woman. So anyway, so I called him, and I said, I'm going to be speaking in Cape May, New Jersey. And he said, that's fantastic. He said, I'll take the ferry from Delaware, and I'll come across and meet you there. And so he did, and we had a wonderful weekend, you know, and he met my friends, all these people in AA, you know, and he said, you don't even know them, but they love you, you know, and you did such a good job, and I'm so proud of you, and you should keep doing that, and Mom, you really have a gift from God, you know. And we had a great weekend, you know. We ran around the beach, we stuck our foot in the ocean in March, and everybody thought we were nuts, but we were like, you know, this is like the ocean in Maine in the summertime, so it's no big deal to us. And I had him picking up all these white rocks, and he says, Mom, why am I picking up these white rocks? And I said, because your crazy mother now leads women's retreats, and I'm going to use these rocks in a retreat. I don't know what I'm going to do with them, but I'm going to use them. Okay, he says, we keep picking them up. And by now, he'd quit his job at the Department of Defense, and he always, since he was a little boy, wanted to be a policeman. And so he called me up, and he says, I'm quitting my job, and I'm going to school to be a police officer. And he was assigned to the 7th District in Washington, D.C., which is Anacostia. It's not the pretty part of D.C., but he loved it. He absolutely just loved it. And he called me one day, and he was crying, and I said, what's the matter? And he said, I've been mentoring this kid, and he said he just was killed in a drive-by shooting. And anyway, we had a wonderful, wonderful weekend. It was just fabulous. We raced each other to the top of the Cape May Lighthouse. And on May 1st of 2002, I got the phone call that no mother wants to get. Sammy was dead. And it was 10 minutes to 2 in the morning, and he died of sepsis, and his esophagus, a hemorrhage of his esophagus from throwing up. And he was working undercover, and he had recently gotten a tattoo, and I believe that it was a dirty tattoo that caused his death, but I can't prove that, and there's no sense in it anyway, you know. The first thing I did when I got that phone call was to get on my knees, and I prayed to the Blessed Mother. And you see, that 1/10 of a faith that I'd asked to have, 1/10 of the faith that my mother has, had now been restored to me 100%. And I got on my knees, and I knelt down beside the bed, and I prayed to the Blessed Mother, and I said, please, come and be with me, because you know what it's like to lose a son. You watch them murder yours. And at 5 o'clock in the morning, I called a friend in AA, and, you know, it's very difficult to get those words to come out of your throat, you know, that your son is gone. And I'm here to tell you that within a half an hour of that phone call, my house was full of people from AA. and the women came in and the men too, and they knew me, because I had been involved in service, and they showed up, and they showed me how to stand up and how to hold my head high, and that my son would expect nothing less of me, and 70 police officers came for his funeral, and they brought his cruiser and several other cruisers, and they're very distinctive, and we're at the funeral home, and I can't even tell you how many people came to that funeral home, and his police partner came up to me, and he hugged me, and he said, "My God, Lillie, I've never seen anything like this in my life." He said, "I've been to a lot of funerals for a lot of cops, but I have never seen anybody with this many friends." And I said, "I know," and they couldn't all come. And he said, "What?" And I said, "Well, they wanted to, but when they got here and saw all these cruisers, they kept on going." The boys from the dump on the hump had a little history. They didn't want to be hanging out with no cops. My son had a hero's funeral. He used to cook for the fire department in Washington, D.C., and, they had the fire trucks across the road with the flag hanging down. And when we got to the church, there were 70 police officers standing on the steps of that church, all in a full salute. And it was quite something, and the church was packed. And my brother said to my mother, "Who the hell are all these people?" And my mother says, "I think it's your sister's friends from AA." And they was, and they put on a banquet for him and in his honor. And, those women showed me how to put one foot in front of the other every day, and I hated how I felt inside. My heart was broken, and they'd say, "You're such a power of example." And in my head, I'd be going, "I don't want to be an effing power of example, okay?" But on the outside, I was doing what they expected of me to do, and that was to stand tall with dignity and grace. And little did I know that 18 months later, I would be called upon to be a power of example to the girl that I called when my son died. Her daughter's husband died very unexpectedly, and I was able to help her through that, And I have a wonderful life today. I'm not a sad woman. That is not what my son would want me to be. He would want me to be having fun, and God has been so good to me. It's absolutely incredible to me that I can fall off in a bar stool, come to AA. They tell me about this program with 12 steps, that I'm not going to do. I'm not doing those 12 steps. But then I read the 9th step, and that sort of appealed to me because I had heard that my ex-husband was in the program, and he owed me about $135,000 in back child support, so I thought I'd stick around while he made his amends, and I'm still waiting. So that's a good thing, It kept me sober, I've been involved in service. I know how hard it is to put on one of these conventions, because I was on the convention for the Maine area roundup for 9 years. And but I got to tell you, if you're not doing service work, you're selling yourself short. I mean, I really think that's where it is. We complain about it, but God, we have a lot of fun doing it too, And some parts of AA I haven't been able to do, like, I haven't been able to, I've been the GSR and the DCM, but that's about as far as I wanted to go because I can't stand them damn assemblies. It just drag on forever. But I'll do anything else they ask me in AA, They want me to make something, I make something. They want me to be over there, I'll be over there, And I do service work, and I have a home group. And I'm a member in good standing. I finally understood what that meant. That woman said that she was a member in good standing of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was like, well, la-dee-da, And today I realize what a member in good standing is. It means you have a home group and you have a sponsor. You have a sponsor that has a sponsor. You work the steps as they're laid out in the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, And you clean up the wreckage of your past, And wise sponsor. She told me that I was going to have to make amends to my ex-husband. And I said, yeah, I'm all over that. I can hardly wait. My idea of making amends was going to be he was going to be walking on the side of the road. I was going to be driving the bus. I would see him and suddenly lose control. And then in a moment of panic, I would throw it in reverse and run him back over again. Yeah. And she said she didn't think that's how it went, that I was supposed to clean up my side of the street. And she said, why don't you do this? Why don't you write him a letter? I have never been so thrilled in my life to do work as I was then. I could hardly wait to get home and write him a letter. And I was going to write every swear word I'd ever heard in my entire life would be somewhere in that letter, along with, you are nothing but a useless bum, I hate your guts, you owe me $135,000. And when I got home, the phone was ringing. And it was my sponsor. And she said, oh, and by the way, Lillie, before you write the letter, why don't you invite God to sit at the table with you while you're writing it? Well, now, how are you going to sit at the table and write a letter? You rotten son of a you, and God's sitting at the table? I don't think that's going to happen. So I write this letter, and now, all of a sudden, I begin to realize that, he missed out on a lot of things. He missed out on a lot of things, You can't have the all-star game again, and you can't have the hockey player again, and you can't see the Marine graduate from the Marine Corps again. You can't bring back the prom. And all of a sudden it dawned on me how many things he had missed in his children's lives and how horrible that must be. Because you see, the heart that came into AA had changed, and the 1/10 of a faith that I asked for had changed. And I began to realize how difficult it must have been for him. And how difficult it must be for any man that has to go through a divorce. As crazy as your house might be, a crazy house is better than no house and no voices. And where that came from, I have no idea, But what a freedom, And I sat down with him in a public place, because she said it had to be a public place, just in case I got off track, I wouldn't get too loud. And, I was able to clean up my side of the street and to tell him, the mistakes that I felt that I had made in our marriage and where I felt I had gone wrong. And I got to tell you, what a freedom. I go to his house now to have lunch, and his significant other is a friend of mine from the 8th grade, and they're very happy, and I'm grateful for that, and today he's a grandparent. We share grandchildren, and he's a granddaddy, and he's doing a good job of that, and I never would have given him credit for that. I never would have allowed him to be a part of their life until I came to AA and learned how to be a woman, I always thought that I was just the greatest, I am the greatest, and if you don't believe me, just ask me and I'll tell you. And what I really was, at my very first meeting, they read How It Works, and when they got to the chapter to the obnoxious, I knew that I was home. I have a disease of perception. It's called alcoholism. I still have it. A few years ago, a friend of mine was asked us to be in charge of the entertainment for the Woman to Woman conference, and what I heard was that I was the entertainment for the women's conference. So I decided to be Elvis Presley. I thought, well, I know a few things about being somebody else. I talked my friend into being Patsy Cline, and I talked somebody else into being Brenda Lee, and we put on this show. Now, they said to us, you have to understand that these women from New York dress up. Now, these people were coming from New York to Maine, and they dress up. And I thought, well, good. So I said to my friend Patty, well, we'll dress up too. Let's go to Goodwill and get some old prom gowns. We'll dress up. And we got plastic tiaras, and we got these gloves, and then we decided to be fashionably late so we could make an appearance. We go marching in there. And what it was a room full of black women dressed in their native African dressed to the hilt, and here we are in these stupid prom gowns. And then the show began, and so we said, we heard you wanted to be entertained, and we sang Who's Sorry Now? And oh my God, this is sober, I'm doing this stuff, And I'll tell you this other story. Ricky, the crazy lady with the hats, and her significant other. One time I was visiting at her house, and he said to us, if you girls were any kind of girls, you'd go in the hospital and visit Ernie. He's from up country, and he hasn't had no visitors, and you girls should go in there and see him. So Ricky says to me, Lillie, meet me at the Maine Medical Center tomorrow at 1 o'clock and wear a hat. Yes, ma'am. So I show up the next day, and the only hat I have is like a Jaws head, right? And so I have that on, and I get out of the car, and she gets out of the car, and she has on a fish head too. Only hers is all sparkly, and she has a fish pocketbook, too. And she's a trained operatic singer, and I can't sing. And I said to her, listen, Ricky, I can't sing, but my mother says if you can't sing good, sing loud, and I know all the words to give my regards to Broadway. She says, great, we'll sing that, we'll do a little tap dance for Ernie. I said, okay. So now this is back before they have all these strict rules, because we don't know anybody's name in Alcoholics Anonymous, Ernie. We go in, is Ernie, you know what, you have an Ernie from my country, and yep, he's on the 3rd floor, so we go up to the 3rd floor. We go to the nurse's station. Where's Ernie? Oh, he's right over there. We go in there with these fish hats on, and Ricky says, hi, Ernie, we're friends of Bill W. Give my regards to Broadway. We do this whole soft shoe routine. We get all done, and he goes, who the hell is Bill W.? But I was willing, I was willing. I restored that house in Wyndham, and I have since restored my mother's house. My mother had a friend that lived with her for years. Both of their husbands died, and they did very well for a long time, and then her friend got really sick. And I asked my mom what she wanted to do, and she said, I'd like to go out of here feet first. And I said, Mom, I can make that happen. And I've been there taking care of her ever since. When I signed up, I thought it'd only be a couple of years. It's been 13. She's doing great. We have a beautiful home. I have a pool in the backyard. I'm not going to tell you that, if you get sober, you're going to have a pool, but I will tell you that if you get a pool, you will have to pay for it. I've made my financial amends. That's kind of cute when you go into the insurance company and say, I'm here to pay you back $2,000 because I filed a false claim 15 years ago. I really had a loss of $200. I told you it was $2,000, and the girl goes, what? And she says, I don't think we have any way to do that. I said, you better get the manager because I have to pay you back the money. And I paid back all of the people that I owed money, even the people I stole from, and what a wonderful life, I just bought a new car. I bought me a little Soul. And next Thursday, I'm leaving with my 94-year-old mother. We're going on a road trip. And we're going to drive to South Carolina. And her job is to do the hamster wave as we go down the road. So she's been practicing, and I want to just tell you that, when I came to my first meeting of AA and looked around, I thought I had joined a room full of losers. I thought you guys needed help. The girl said to me after the meeting, keep coming back. I thought she said, we need you. And I certainly thought you did. I said, you need an exalted ruler, and I'm going to keep coming until I'm that. And I'm still coming, and I have a wonderful, wonderful life. My grandchildren live across the street, and after my son died, I bought the house across the street and rehabbed it, and now my daughter and her husband and my 2 grandchildren live there, and it's a pretty good deal. Because, every day my granddaughter gets off the school bus, and she comes in the house to have cookies and milk, and she calls me Grand, and she's studying to be an actress. And she's going up the stairs, and she says, Grand, when I get my Academy Award, I'm going to give a shout-out to you. I said, when you get your Academy Award, you better take me with you on the red carpet, And I don't know how it gets better than what I've got going on, I remember coming here and people would say, they had a life second to none. I was like, what the heck does that mean, And I can't say that I have a life second to none, but I can tell you that I have the best life that I never dreamed was possible, for this alcoholic. To fall off in a bar stool in Wyndham, Maine, a hopeless, helpless, pathetic, drunk mother, and end up here sober with 23 years. And because of people like you, because people like you were able to take my hand, you knew who I was when I walked in the door. You knew that I was an alcoholic. And you were willing to help me, and are still willing to help me. And is still willing to do the things that help me to do the things that I need to do so that I can walk in this world with my head held high. I'm going to close with a little adaptation that I made of the 12 steps, the footprints prayer. And it goes like this. One night a man had a dream that he was looking down at the beach, and he saw a set of footprints drunkenly zigzagging in circles. Then he saw two sets of footprints, one large, one small, one his, one God's. Next, the small footprints stepped into the large footprints and began to grow. Then once again, the footprints were zigzagging round and about with wild abandon. This really bothered the man, and he said to God, "When I asked you for help, you came and walked with me." And God said, "Yes, I gave you the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and as you began to put them into practice, you began to grow." The man replied, "Then God, I don't understand. If I was doing the footwork, what happened? Why the wild zigzagging again?" And God said, "Oh, my precious one, I would not abandon you. After you learned the steps, we danced." Thank you.